right, well, we'll go ahead and launch. Good morning, everybody. Today is the June 14th, first portion of the Notary Governance call. I'd like to welcome you all. If you're looking for the high-level agenda, this is kind of how we structure these calls. The first couple moments we dedicate to introductions, housekeeping, participation. Then we jump into metrics and we take a look at how our time to data cap is doing and the overall network storage. Then we bring up issues that are relevant to the community. So these are things that we should flag, you should flag. Then we save time for any issues that you'd like to discuss. And at the very end, if there's time, we have a Q&A with any of the applications that have been submitted with videos. So with that going forward, today we are going to give you a brand new name and face on your governance team that's working. So you already know Deep. I think he's joining on a separate call, is not here right now with us, and Galen and myself. But we have a new member who's Rajef. He's going to be working on trust and transparency. And oh my goodness, he's not on the call yet. So when he comes on, I might call him out by name and have him introduce himself. He's with Protocol Labs. This is his second week at the company, and he'll be looking at how we can do monitoring, how we can incorporate some of the different tools that are in development to make those processes work a little bit better for you, so it's not such a manual process, and that we could actually start to build out a lot more trust when we have all these reports of like, hey, I saw self-dealing, or hey, I saw this thing happen. How do we have tools in place that actually help the community? So once he joins the call, we'll make sure to save some time at the end for him to say a proper intro, but you should see his name be added to some distribution channels. So he's one of us. He works at PL, very friendly, very sweet, and when he joins, we'll say it proper as well. If you're on the call right now, if you're able to, making sure that your name matches your organization makes it a whole lot simpler to help you if you have questions or need help in the future. So right now, I'm a bad example, but Galen is a great example. And that right now, Kevin, you have no idea what organization I'm with. But if you look at Galen's name, it actually says Galen Filecoin Foundation. So to make that change, all you have to do is just click on your video, hit rename. Completely optional, but we take screenshots. We make sure that we're giving you participation if you're a notary on the call, or if you're an applicant or a storage provider or just a community enthusiast. It's really easy for us to come back and be like, who were you? How can we help you if we know who you are? So taking that moment will make it a lot easier for us to get you back. All right, so if you are a notary and on the call, we're still doing this kind of check-in model right here. Galen will be posting a link in chat. Just go ahead and fill out that you're here on this survey, and we'll be diving it forward. This is just a quick way that we can give you points towards your SLA and your participation on the program. So nothing new. This is only for notaries. If you are on the call and you're a new storage provider or a new applicant, you just want to kind of start logging these ahead of time. It's also valuable if you do decide to apply to be a notary in the future. You can call back, hey, I was on 50% of the notary calls last year, and this will be your record of proof to kind of show that. So with that, let's jump into metrics. Now, we show this slide, I think every time. And one thing that I'd like to point out are two big changes that we've seen since the last cycle. The first is average time to data cap. We're a full 2 days slower. And this is kind of par for some of the transitions that we're making. As we kind of rounded the election and as we're waiting for this data cap distribution, we kind of had a slowdown on that front. And as we're rolling out this new B3 process that Galen's going to talk about in length, that also caused some slowdowns. Now you can see this is an average time. So that means that somebody might have been waiting 2-3 weeks, or somebody might have been waiting like 20 minutes. But when we average it together right now, we're still at that 3-day mark. But what we're looking to do is bring that back to the day now that we have all the data cap being distributed to your notaries, now that we have B3 launching to make that more effective. So we're going to be calling a lot of attention to this number here, this average time to data cap, and really showing how we can get this down. And we have some tools and feedback as we go through this program. Now, as we take a look at the data cap that's coming in, we also have network increasing. So we showed this slide about every other time, just to kind of check in on it. If you look at the size and scale that we have for the Filecoin Plus program, it's just monumental amount of storage that we're bringing in. So that's why we invest a lot of time in making sure that we're doing right and making sure that we're getting your feedback as members of the community that this is a program that's working for you. And so a lot of the slides that we have on here, they're not statements, they're questions. Like, how do you think we should proceed? And so always feel like you have a voice, a vote, and that your opinion matters. And we'll talk about some of the ways that you could document as we go through the call. Now, here's the first question where we're going to ask for that opinion. For you notaries, you'll notice that every day in the notary channel in Slack, there'll be a posting from the filter bot. The point of this posting is to flag the issues that need diligence, either applications, LDNs, whatever it may be. And the way it currently stands right now is that it will say, hey, we have a client request, it's coming from this, and it's assigned. The way that it's set up, it does not tag your name. So if it was assigned to Kevin, it would just list Kevin in Slack, but it wouldn't tag me. Therefore, I wouldn't get a banner, I wouldn't get a pop-up. There's some pros and cons. The pro of not tagging you is we were worried about spamming. Because if you had 6 applications that were on your deck, you would then get 6 tags, and now your Slack becomes something where it's harder for you to manage it because you're getting these tags. The con is that unless you're actively looking at this filter bot, you might not see that you have issues, and therefore it becomes spam in itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you guys comment in chat. Feel free to give like a unmute. But what we're looking for is input from the notaries on essentially, would you like to pilot a program where your name is tagged, where if you have an application, it will tag you and then you'll see that, but you will get much more spam. So unmute if you have thoughts or discussion looking for it from the notaries.
Hey, Kevin. I don't think it's going to be too much spam to get added in this channel, since it happens like all at one time. So if you're assigned to multiple requests and it just pings all of it at once, then you'll just get like a little number 5. So that's not too bad, in my opinion.
Then I see a couple thumbs up.
I had another question. I think, is it weekly or is it daily?
It's daily.
It's daily? Okay. Because we can also experiment with that too. I think when we had initially designed it, it was going to be weekly. But I think just with the volume of issues and how quickly they changed, we were not tracking them. But if it becomes too noisy, even every other day, like might make sense.
It's a great point. So I put this out, James, thanks for the feedback. Fat Man plus Kid, Jackie for your thumbs up. What we'll do is consider this like Jurassic Park. We're still tinkering with the DNA on this one to get the perfect dinosaur. So if we post this up and you're like, man, guys, this is way too much, let us know. I think that what we're trying to communicate in this is we're trying to get it right. So obviously, as we evolve on this, let us know. That's great feedback, Galen. I think that we'll take that and we'll start to put that into practice. As always, appreciate that. I'm going to turn this over to Galen. Did you want to talk to the slide on the objective sprints?
Yes. So if you were able to join us either virtually or in person for our sort of state of the program talk last week at Fil+ Day, we had a number of slides about our objectives sort of from now to October. These are the objectives for the governance team, just as we're kind of thinking about the high level programmatic objectives that we're tracking towards. And one of the things we talked about was organizing ourselves into 6-week sprints and seeing if we can chunk these a little bit more for ourselves, but then also for the community, and talk about like, what are we trying to get accomplished in the next 6 weeks? So this is a first draft, and across the next 6 weeks, we're going to sort of check in on these things with a target of the July 26th governance call, having sort of big updates on what we hit, what we missed, and what our new sprint objectives are. So from the system status, we'll be implementing LDN v3. We're going to talk about more of that later in the call. Parts of that are live, but across the next 6 weeks, like we want to have some more tooling and training and make sure that it is working. We have a target of 200 PIBs sealed in DataCap and 175 active LDNs. I think that we can maybe hit both of those in 6 weeks. We will be launching time to DataCap for LDNs. with a approval to first allocation being less than 3 days and days without data cap being 0 as a target. We're going to get some README documents updated. We are going to hopefully hear from some working group proposals and be launching those in GitHub and testing the implementation of them. You heard about some of those at Fil+ Day as well. And we have a target of getting a job description out for some increased headcount and hopefully starting some interviewing. I don't know how quickly we will be able to select a candidate and onboard. It may take more than 6 weeks. So a conservative objective is to at least have the job description and some interviews going. So those are our objectives. Before we move into the next section with open issues, Deep and Raghav are here. I'm going to pass the mic to Deep to do an intro of Raghav.
Yes, putting him back on the spot. It's what he's gotten for the last week. Hey, everybody. Yep. Good to see you all here. Really great to see many of you at Filecoin Plus Day, though unfortunately I wasn't able to be there in person. I did see a lot of you join in person and on Zoom. Rough and quick introduction for Raghav, who just joined the team from the PL side. He's going to be spending his time working and being more focused on trust and transparency. So you'll see him in and out of conversations regarding dashboards, APIs, as well as a lot of the work around the systems we're designing for risk analysis. I'm really excited to have him on board. He brings a wealth of experience that is in many ways related to the work that I'm excited to do with him. And so please give him a warm welcome. If you see him anywhere in Slack or GitHub, I hope that you can engage with him as you would engage with any of us. So appreciate your time and your efforts.
Thanks, Deep. Yeah, hi, everyone. I met a few of you last week, but excited to continue to work together. As Deep mentioned, I'll be kind of thinking a lot about risk, trust and transparency and risk analysis within Fil+. And so I think as I'm just catching up, I know a few of you, we had side conversations in Austin last week, but yeah, feel free to reach out. I'll probably take some time to get back to you so that I can find the right people who have the right information. But yeah, excited to be here and looking forward to working with all of you.
Just to have you too. Galen, is there anything else you wanted to add on this before we go on?
No.
All right. Okay, here are the open issues that we've had flagged from Slack, from GitHub, and discussion at the day. So let's talk about these 4, and these 4 are meant to be discussions, so I'll always pause before we go on to get your feedback. If you don't want to unmute, feel free to comment in the chat, and we'll be in there as well. So the first one is just like a huzzah, Filecoin Plus Day took place this time last week. We had hundreds of viewers that came in live, and we're going to have the videos up shortly. And this will be a nice way if you were curious to see some of the different points about the community, but don't always have time to like read a big repo or dive into it. The goal of the Filecoin Plus Day was that we could engage with everyone live and in person on the chats, but also have this historical resource that we could come back to. So if you look at some of the talks, they dealt with like crypto economics or legal issues, or Galen just gave like a 30,000 foot view of like the program. So if you have someone new to your team and you're trying to onboard them, you could have them watch the videos. We're currently going through post-production. It's kind of a lengthy process to make sure the cameras are lined up. And just like last time, we'll invest in making sure that these are translated with subtitles on the very bottom for the Mandarin speakers to come through. So as these release, we'll post these online. I'll keep you updated in the Fil+ channel and the Fil+ Notaries when these go live. So that way you can come back, watch them, share them with friends, get your whole family together, and Saturday night popcorn, Fil+ Day. So I'll be up as soon as we go. Any questions, feel free to let us know. Deep, Galen, do you guys have any learnings or anything from Filecoin Plus Day that you wanted to share, or anybody else in the call?
Yeah, I thought that it was amazing. I loved like seeing the different community presentations and getting all the conversations. I think that huge kudos to K-Ray for really spearheading this Filecoin Plus Day. I was there for a lot of the first one, and I just think that the program has grown exponentially. Our footprint has grown, and the kind of community engagement and participation is phenomenal. So really looking forward to what we kind of generate with all that hype, but then also like where we're going to go with Filecoin Plus Day next year. I do think that it's going to need to be 5 or 6 hours, and we're going to have some really great kind of working group sessions. So stoked to hear more feedback from other people as well. I think that there's going to be some surveys going around to all the different attendees to sort of see what they liked and what we need to change. But thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah, plus one. I got to also view it from the eyes of somebody not there in person, which honestly the majority of attendees are not in that room and are participating online. And it was really great to be able to participate and engage in the way that at least I felt like I was able to. And so I really appreciate the creation of the space, Kere, for like everybody that wasn't able to be there in person. My biggest takeaway was it was a freaking blast. It needs to be longer. There's too much stuff that we have to talk about, and there's a lot of awesome things to share, and we need more of these. One a year is too little. And so I'm really excited for a tour of Fil Plus days to come, where we get to meet many of you more in person as well. And now I'm just volunteering Kere for more work, and so his pace just but yeah, really excited to have many more of these this year and next year. Get maybe do them in different locations too, so we can make them more accessible to people to come in person, because even though I think it was very successful to participate remotely, it is nice to see some of the people that you see so frequently on Zoom in person as well. Excellent question from Eric, by the way, in chat. We had a photographer in the room, so I'm assuming we'll get some photos from that soon. But yeah, thank you all so much for participating, whether it was in person or virtual. Please give us your honest feedback. Like, as I mentioned, I do think we need to do more of these, and so I'd love to get your feedback to either support, disagree, or even modify the way we think about them.
All right, everybody. The next topic is ledger verification. And this has been something that we've kind of talked about in the last couple of calls, so thanks for your patience. Those of you that have verified your ledger, this is that point in the conversation where you can just kick back, say, and let us go through it. We have 3 slides to talk about this. I'll take the first one and Galen will take the next 2. So here's the thing with the ledger verification. For new notaries that are coming on board, this is a new process. And essentially what this ledger verification does is it says that you physically have the ledger that you're signing on. That's all it is doing. It's doing that physical handover for it. This is a requirement. And the reason for the requirement is it's part of that trust and safety that we're building into the network. So some of you have had technical blockers for this. And for that, I am so sorry, and we're working to get through it. The thing that I will say is sometimes if you send a DM or a group message between certain individuals, just with the sheer volume of communication that's coming through Slack, you may receive a delayed response. So one of the things I'm asking is if you have any kind of blockers with your ledger, either you get an error message or it doesn't work or something's going on with your ledger, please share that in the Fil Plus Notaries Slack channel. And the reason for this is 1, we can make it public record and share that solution with other individuals. But 2, it will make sure that it doesn't fall off. It might get overlooked or it might get stepped on with other messages and we don't know that we've overlooked it. So I'm going to shift any kind of direct messages that you might send me like, hey, great question. Can we please take this in a public forum? And so just to kind of give you a prep on that. I'm going to turn the floor over to Galen. He's going to talk about the why and what's going on with this ledger.
Yep. So as you mentioned, there might be a number of reasons as to like why you have not completed this step. For some of you, for some of the notaries, if you have not completed this step, you also have not received any data cap and been ratified. And that might be a situation where you don't have a physical ledger device and you let us know. We get it. These are like unprecedented times, like shipping delays are a big thing. We really want to add more tooling support, but currently this is the tooling support that we have. Our ask to notaries in that position is please continue to participate. You can continue to do diligence in GitHub issues. You continue to ask questions, continue to come to these calls, make discussion topics, and also keep us updated. When you do get your device, we'll ratify you. And we understand, as we look to forward election cycles, just be transparent. That's all. That's what we ask all the time. For some notaries, you may have a ledger, but you have not done the verification part. In this case, like it is possible that we have already ratified you, sent you the data cap to the address that you provided, we need you to go complete those steps to actually verify your ledger in order to then start making allocations. So kind of, do that step. That's on you. And then for some of you, you may have a ledger, but the address that you gave us on one part of your application doesn't match the address on your ledger. So we may have two competing addresses on hand for you. And in that situation, you're going to hit that technical blocker because those addresses don't match. For a lot of you, we have sent you requests in your GitHub issue asking to kind of confirm which one so that we can have one source of truth. We're only going to send that data cap allocation to one address. We want that to be an address that has been verified by a ledger. So please do that. Next slide, please, K-Ray. So based on my Airtable that I've been using, I think these are the notaries that are not yet verified. There may have been some updates that I've missed, but if you see your name on this list, it is possible or probable that you have not completed the ledger verification process, and you may or may not have been ratified yet, and you may or may not be on things like the LDNV3. So as we mentioned, please talk to us in Slack. Check your GitHub issue, check your ledger that the address matches on your ledger device as what is in your GitHub issue, attempt to verify, message us in Slack when you have completed that process, or to let us know wherever you are. If we've already communicated to you directly in your GitHub application to say, we hear you that you don't have a ledger, thanks for letting us know. You don't need to do anything more right now, just keep participating and let us know when you get one. So I'm gonna pause here and just see if there are any quick questions, but I don't see any hands. So I think we can just move forward with this because I think most of the people on this call know their status. Yep. Okay, Ray, back to you.
Sweet. All right. Thank you, Fat Man, for proposing this as a discussion item. Here's what this slide is talking about. When we started the Fil+ governance plan, this sync that we're on right now used to be once a day. But if you look at how wide and big and beautiful our world is, that meant that some people had to dial in at 2 in the morning, while it was conducive for some people at early morning. So the decision was made early in spring of 2021 to actually split the call into 2 times. And the goal was to get one half of the planet with the first call, and then the second half of the planet with the second. What's happening is with time zone shifts and changes in schedules, that some of these calls might not be conducive for everybody. As we can see on this call right now, we have around 30 of us. In the afternoon call, we might have around 10 or 15. Now that's fine if it works, but sometimes it's always good to come back to our roots and evaluate if we have any sacred cows or if we have something that should be evaluated. And this we have for evaluation is the time that we have these calls together. So there was an issue that was made, 538, and it was just essentially asking, is this time a conducive time or could we do better? So what we did was we pulled the applications, who's a notary, where they are in the world, and we're essentially split between North America, China, and then those of you that are calling in from like Oceania, EU, you populate the outlying perimeters. So the intent is that we maximize this time for everyone. What we're seeing is that we have a lot of you come to this morning session and fewer come to the second. So the question that we're going to propose right now is, some of the ideas floated was delay the second session by 1 hour, which would push it back to 5 p.m., or make it a different time zone for the Asian audiences. I have a link here. I'm going to drop this into chat just to make it a little bit easier for everyone to see as far as time zones go. But if you have thoughts, this would be a good time to post it in chat. If you want to come directly to this issue, this 538, feel free to actually reply right back on this proposal with like, hey, I think that's a wonderful idea. Can we see this time zone, that time zone? And this is nice if you're going to be commuting at a certain hour. I think we're going to do this straight by representative democracy, where we don't have the overwhelming number, but we have what number works best with the most people. So I'm going to mute. And if you want to mute, talk about times, why you come to the first, why you might not come to the second. This is our discussion time on what to do.
Well, for me, the second session is in the middle of the night, so this is the only possibility. 5 p.m. is fine for me. It works. Earlier could be, later is difficult.
I just want to flag that, if people can come to just one, that is fine. I think it's going to be impossible for us to create a world in which people can come to two. And so why not, like, coming to one is perfect, I think. What I'm trying to figure out is like, I guess like, Kiri, if I can ask your question slightly differently, and maybe asking in the call doesn't work, is basically, hey, maybe if you're watching the recording and you wish you could have been here, can you please reach out to us and tell us what time you could have been here at? Because if we're missing a population, it would be really good to make sure that we're able to hit the population. But I don't think it's certainly required that people make it twice. And so I think this request was for adjusting the call to be more friendly to the Asia time zones. I think Fatman is on the call. If you want to give us a little bit more context, or if you're able to make this one consistently, then maybe we just leave the other one as it is. What do you think? I know it's almost midnight in Beijing. So if you just want to chat, like, that's completely reasonable. No. Try again.
Batman, what we'll do is if you want to play around with your mic and it comes back up, we'll save time at the end of this call for any kind of like circling back on. Okay, then we will keep this issue open. If you have thoughts, times, please post it in 538. Please post it in Slack, and we'll collect some more signal. Again, this is never a done issue. We'll always look at like how we can maximize time. So Batman, if you get that mic, love to hear from you. And man. All right. Galen, V3.
V3, rollout, roll over, roll tide. Any football fans out there? No, it's just all right. We got someone. So we are rolling with V3. We've been talking about this for a while. We've been building the tooling in the background. I know that there's not always like transparency into like the timelines on these things, but we have to do a lot of testing with our various dev teams before we can make these implementation changes. So at this point in time, this tooling has started to launch. We will be rolling over existing issues. So a note here for clients and notaries, the existing approved GitHub issue will remain open. The next allocation is just going to come from a new notary source. So you as a client shouldn't necessarily need to try and create a new issue or anything like that. If your issue has not yet been approved, we're still going to be going through those and making those approvals. Excuse me. And that you will get your first allocation from the V3 notary. This should decrease some of that time for the root key holder delay, because now we don't need the root key holders to stand up a new notary for every client. So this is a place where we're trying to decrease that time to data cap. Calling this out for everybody, an important label for you to watch for if you're a notary and you're like, hey, I tried to do a thing, it didn't work. If you're a client and you're like, what's going on? What's happening? Once you have been approved, you should see this state approved label. That should persist and remain on for all of the clients that have been approved by the governance team to then start getting those allocations. We're still going to follow the allocation schedule, where they receive the next allocation after they've used 75% of their previous allocation, and those allocation volumes ramp up. All of that is the same. So if you see the state approved, it's been approved by the governance team. That means that it still needs diligence and signatures by the notaries. Kayray, if you could click to the next slide, please. So notaries, your expectations are still basically the same under this V3 process. When an app has state approved and ready to sign, that means that you should see it in the front end. It still needs 2 signatures. Before you jump in and sign it, you should still go do the diligence. Review their application, review their past deal making behavior. The bot will still post stats for previous allocation behavior, and ask more questions in the GitHub issue, and then use the front end to sign it. So notaries, for you guys, the process is the same, pretty much exactly the same as it was. We're just changing that root key holder step, and we're changing where that data cap comes from. Next slide, please, Kayray. So community expectations. So this is for the notaries as well as the broader community, as well as the governance team. Raise a flag if you have questions about something. Notaries, if you jump in and you see that an application has the ready to sign label, but then you start reading it and you're like, wait a minute, we're missing something here. There's a flag for some additional question. Ask your question, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to create a template comment that the bot is going to be watching out for that will basically pause subsequent allocations. And so we'll let you know when that's ready. We'll have a tutorial, like a recorded screencast tutorial on how to save that template, and we'll put that stuff in the README. But this is for notaries and just community members. If you see something like, this client is doing a thing that they said they were going to do something else, but right now their allocation rate is, 85%, and I want to pause them getting their next allocation until they can kind of give us some more explanation as to why. Use the comment, ask the question. It'll pause allocations. It won't show up for the notaries. It will give the client time to reply and justify what they're doing. There could be all kinds of reasons that a community member may want to pause, but this, shouldn't be abused. And if we see that it is being abused by a certain community member or a certain type of person, we'll have to adjust the system. But for right now, we're going to use a template comment that will put a certain label on, and anyone will be able to put that comment on. So like I said, that's not quite ready yet. It will be, and we'll let you know. Any questions? Oh, there's one. I have one more slide. Kayray, if you could advance for me, please. Thank you. So this is now live on our interplanetary dashboard. We have a new subsection for large data sets. And so because all of these allocations are going to come from a single multi-sig notary, we had to kind of restructure how we track basically the interaction between a group of notaries working with a group of clients. So in this situation, because it's every 2 signatures leads to an allocation, we essentially have these dyads where 2 notaries working together send out data cap. So this is a new dashboard that will let us see things like what was the allowance number to a particular client, who were the 2 signers, what was the amount, what was the date, and we can start to see if there are, tracking patterns of behavior, tracking things like what notaries are, prioritizing certain types of clients or things like that, what clients are not getting enough attention. So this dashboard is now live. And again, we encourage community members to lean on this dashboard and help us investigate what is happening in the community. And if you start to see that this dashboard is missing a certain piece of information, let us know, or be empowered to build your own dashboard as well, pulling this data. So thank you to all of our dashboard teams. It really helps. I think there's some questions happening in chat around a different topic that Deep is addressing. But at this point in time, V3 is launching. We are rolling that out. And GitHub issues will be getting updated and data cap will continue to flow. Once we are confident that V3 is working and we have connected all of the existing clients to that new notary, we will then start the process of deprecating all of those other multi-sig notaries. So those will be getting shut down, and everyone will be using the new V3 multi-sig. The exception, because there's exceptions to every rule, we have a number of projects that are different proof of concepts that are sort of operating out of the traditional flow of V2. For example, the seal storage projects, those have a different subset of notaries. Those multi-sigs will continue to operate. We will continue to track those proof of concepts. And we may still have other new large data set things that we test. For example, things coming out of the enterprise working group, those may follow a different pattern. So while we have almost all of our LDNs, probably 95% of them will go through V3, we will still have some that have a different multi-sig structure. So those will still remain the way they do. At this point, I'm going to see if there are any hands for questions from notaries, clients, or community members on the call about the V3 changes. Take a sip to stall for time. Deep, the question now is, do you think there's any coffee in this cup?
I think you still have some coffee in this cup.
You would be right.
And this round of coffee in cup has been won by.
Okay, great. So the V3 proposal issue is also still up in GitHub as we roll this out and test it. If you see problems or issues, if the tooling is missing something, go to the Notary Governance repo, jump in that issue, and let us know what's working and what's not. So thank you for your patience and support. I think there's a chat question.
I think Kerry already followed up to this thread in Slack. So Coda, Blair, if you don't mind checking the thread, Kerry has some clarifying questions for you, and this should help us get you moving in the right direction. Thanks, Kerry, for the follow-up.
Yes, and we are working with the Kiko team on issues with proposing and approving. Okay, that's it for me in LDNB3. Kerry?
All right. So we're going to share the link one more time. This is just for SLA. If you want to get quote unquote credit for being here, we count this to you existing notaries, or you that might want to come in the future. And if you join the call late, Galen just posted the link there. Thank you for that. Okay, we're going to turn the floor over to any kind of community discussion before we get into applicant Q&A. So if you're on the line and you have some topic that you'd like to flag or something that we talked about, this would be the time to do it. And then what we're going to do after this is save time for any of the questions that may have come from any of the applicants. So notaries on the line, storage providers, open forum for anything we want to talk about now.
I've got a question, I guess, for folks regarding these topics. Does anybody here have any questions about anything regarding anything that was discussed at Filecoin Plus Day if you were there, or even LDN V3 that you feel like you haven't had the opportunity to discuss yet? Because we shared a lot of updates, a lot of things have changed, a lot of things are moving. And sometimes because of time zones, because of like the environment not being created, you may not have felt comfortable asking questions about this stuff. And so I'd love to just, on any of these topics, any questions. There are no stupid questions. If you have any thoughts, any clarifying questions, anything that you want to understand a little bit better, now is a great time to have that conversation. I see a hand. Faye.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead. So I see the plan is we want to do a sprint for 200 pips. I know it shouldn't be an issue on the SP side, but do we have enough data to store on the client side?
Yeah, so it's actually the number that was shared at Fil+ Day by Galen was 400 pips. And so, yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think that like looking at the use cases that we enable today versus the use cases we may enable in the future does definitely play like a role in like how we get to this number or how we feel like we want to. I think a couple of thoughts for me, and then Galen, please feel free to jump in. One, I'm sort of looking at roughly like wanting to get to that number first, regardless of whether or not that data is unique, right? So if we're looking at like 5x replication on average, that number looks a lot easier to reach. We comfortably have that much data cap already assigned. And so that's one. Second is if you look at that number as unique data and you look at the data cap that's been allocated to clients today, it's already very close to 400 PB. I think last I checked, it was like 380 PB of data cap committed to clients just through LDNs. That effectively means that if all the LDN applications are actually valid and coming through and are useful, then we already have that much like data like available to go, regardless. Like in some cases, you know, replication factors may look different, but it does show that like there's presence and willingness to bring on that much data onto the network. And that's like LDN applications today on June 14th. Right, like we're going to continue to see more come in. I know that there's several different teams in the ecosystem that are working on different forms of business development and bringing on substantively different types of clients in the near future. So I'm really excited to see what they bring on, because I'm pretty confident we'll see a significant amount of throughput from those. And then last and definitely not least is, oh, sorry, you're talking about the sprint specifically. I was thinking about like the October goals. Sorry, thanks for clarifying. I think for one thing that I do want to add to this is also that in general, like if you look at a lot of the current LDN applications, a lot of them say 5 PB because the application says that you're currently limited to 5 PB. But many of them in their text say, you know, this use case has 50 or 20 or 100. And so I'm really excited for a lot of those to go through what they consider to be their initial POCs or their validation phases to bring on like a magnitude of additional data cap. And so part of this means we need to improve our processes to move quickly enough to not block clients that are interested in making the progress that they claim they are. And then part of this is also just, you know, as a software, as a network, as an onboarding process, of which Filecoin Plus is just a piece of. The whole thing still needs to work. But yeah, sorry, ramble a little bit. Galen, please feel free to add.
Yeah, I think one of the things to like call out is Faye, specifically to your question of like, do we think that we can get to 200 in 6 weeks by July 26th? And do we think that there is enough data there from clients that we can actually hit that amount sealed? I agree with Deep that I think the answer is yes. I think that the storage providers are able to get us there with the speed that they can onboard it. And I think that the question kind of becomes, what type of data, how many replications, where is it coming from, and how distributed is it? And that's what we want to learn. I also think that one of the things we want to unblock with V3 that Deep mentioned is that artificial ceiling. Because if we don't need to put that ceiling amount on chain with a notary from the get-go, if instead we have this subscription top-up model for that multi-sig notary, then where we can get to pretty quickly is a client can show up and we can say, what is your total data size counting replications that you want to onboard for this project? And they can then tell us, oh, it's 8 PIBs. And we think that weekly we can do 250. Then we don't need to put 8 PIBs on chain at that notary multisig. We just still have the 2 weeks of actual usage at the notary level, but we now have a better estimate of how much are all of our LDNs anticipating they're going to need. And so then when an LDN comes in, we don't need to say, well, the max that you can request right now is 5. We could just ask them what they actually want and then work towards that number. I do think that if we get to 175 active LDNs, you know, if those have 5 PIBs on average each, then we'll blow up that 200 PIBs sealed. But it is a good question, because there will always be the thing of how quickly can one part of this funnel move when everything has to like flow in sequence. If the data isn't there, the onboarding rate isn't gonna, you know, keep ramping. If the onboarding rate isn't ramping, then the tooling to make the onboarding smoother isn't going to be prioritized, right? So it will always be sort of a balancing factor. Faye, I don't know if that answers your question, but happy to talk more to it.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
And Joss, awesome information there. Other questions, comments on these open issues? And if not, then I think we have time for possibly 2 applicant pitches. Is that right, K-Ray?
Well, yeah, just to kind of like check in with everybody who's on the line. What we found was there were a lot of fabulous applications coming through, and a lot of those organizations wanted to share their projects. But the dilemma was so many projects to share that we wouldn't have time for any kind of community discussion. It would just be demos. So in the governance call repo, you can request an item, like that man suggesting we talk about the time zones, as well as anybody who submitted an application and wants to share it. So what they've been doing for everybody's transparency is they post a thread on the GitHub issue that says, hey, I'd like to be a part or be on the call. They provide a brief information about their company, where they are, and then they record a 5-minute video, which comes from this folder, and then I put in here. And then I share that in Slack with all of you notaries, as well as public in the applications. So that way you could see these 5 videos, watch these ahead of time. And then when we come to this call, we can now have this set up. So rather than having to invest, 20, 30, 35 minutes to watch these, we could spend time to ask specific questions like, hey, I see that you have private data on yours. Or you could flag like, hey, I don't know why you would need police video surveillance. So we're going to kind of open this up, maybe go one at a time. If notaries have watched this, I'm going to give you the floor first. So any notaries that are on the call that would like to ask an application question, the floor is yours. After the notaries have finished their calls, if any of you applicants are on the line and you want to provide any additional context, you'll be second. So I'll mute any notaries that have any questions on these. The floor is yours.
K-Ray, can we link that that whole GitHub or the Google Drive folder, or should we link to?
We can make the whole folder view only theoretically, and like that way anybody can see it. Like this is super cool. Also, we should just store these on Filecoin.
Yeah, totally.
I did not have time to look at the videos yet, so these are new for me. So sorry.
It's okay. I didn't have time to look at these videos yet either, so I'm also excited. But I do think we have some open question here already on this first one about police data and whether or not that issue needs more explanation. I would be curious to hear from the notaries if they have further questions about that.
Well, I don't see police data as valuable to the network, to be honest, but perhaps somebody can explain why it should be on Filecoin.
Okay. Yeah. We got a hand from that client.
I think that's, go ahead. The floor is yours. Hunan Blue Storage, if you want to address the question about the data and the relevancy and the police aspect, I see your hand. The floor is yours.
Might be a tech hurdle to get the mic connected. That's also a good question to put more information in the GitHub issue, which I think K-Ray linked the video here. I'm going to pull up their LDN and link it as well, 323.
think I put that in chat. There should be the link form in chat, ideally. Unless I bad. Thank you. All right. Giving the notaries a chance, if you want to come back, if any of the applicants are on the call, I'm going to mute you while you get your mic set up. If you're on the call on an applicant and you'd like to kind of address any of the questions, I think one thing that I see with this is one, props for making the video, props for posting the application review. There's some common questions that seem to come up again and again. And I kind of put those as prompts for like what you should address. And some of the common questions are like, who is your organization? Like, how do you verify that? So providing details about who you are, why are you trusted? And then what are you doing with the data? And then addressing some of the questions that you might hear, like, is it open? Is it public? Does it benefit? So if your request has like large private enterprise data, yes, it's going to hang. It's going to require a lot of additional steps. And if you are asking for these large data sets, if you are asking for this grant, essentially what's going to be is the onus is on you to go back and address these questions, to provide this additional information. So what I highly recommend you do is that you look at other examples of other applications that have been processed. So if you've submitted an application and it's been hanging for 2 or 3 weeks, a real common question is maybe a notary looked at it, said, this is going to require so much diligence that I just want to kind of hold off. So maybe that's your cue to say, look, I'm going to look at a few other applications that are similar to mine that have been approved, see what questions have come up, and then answer those myself as I go through there. And I guarantee you, you're going to see a lot faster traction if you come back to the application review and be like, hey, you might be curious about these questions. I've addressed them. Here's my video. I'm waiting for data, and then I can help fast track it. But that seems to be the biggest slowdown. So I see that the hand came back up from Hunan Blue Storm. We'll give your mic another try.
Yeah. Can everybody hear my voice now? About the police data, I want to mention that as present, the data we plan to store in Filecoin are mainly on social governance and have been stored on our own platform. So this data can be made public and accessed by anyone. And our data have different categories. We are planning to store in Filecoin. This is the public data, like some street monitoring, and also we have some data can be allowed everyone to check. So we only put this category data on the Filecoin. Also, we have the private data, but that part of data we are not planning to put on the Filecoin yet. Okay.
I think Wynan, did you
I
have a
think
question?
if you're saying the data is is public, then it should be already published somewhere on a website, right? Like a list of files or indexing.
No, I mentioned that we have already put some data on the Ali Cloud, and also we have our own platform. Because this kind of data that we want, when we communicate with the Ali Cloud technicals, they have mentioned ipfs. So we learn about Filecoin and Fil+, this project. So we want to put some of our data that can everyone to allowed to see this part of data to put on the Filecoin to have a test project, something like that. So we have a huge numbers of data, but even five PB is very small to us. But we want to have a try to have a good start.
Got it.
Do you
These are
have the
great
list of files and their sizes listed in the issue or published on the internet somewhere?
No, not yet. But if you want to check some demos or you want to check some our samples, we can allow if you want, because we have also put some data on Ali Cloud.
I don't know about do you have some plan or information regarding privacy about the data, the type of data?
I mean, we have different kind of data. Some of the data is the private data. That part of data we are planning. We are not planning to put on Filecoin yet. We are the first step to put on Filecoin is the public data. That part of data we can put in.
Yeah, it's a good point about the public and private data. So, Hunan, I'm going to mute and we're going to kind of put a cap on this one. I think the closing thought on this one is hopefully this system is going to start to improve and get a little bit better. And that system is, if you're an applicant and it's been longer than a week and you haven't seen traction, a good way to kind of address it is look at past issues, see what kind of questions. Those of you on the call, you're seeing that a lot of the questions are like, is this public already? How are we doing it? So Hunan, I know that you have more questions. This is great to take it to that application review Slack channel. That way it's a public record is going forward. Also remember that your GitHub ticket is a public record. So addressing, linking, and commenting that public forum is what we're looking for, and that will take it back. There's going to be another call taking place at 4 o'clock Pacific. I'll be posting that time. So if you want to come back, share more details, or just making sure that you get more traction, we invite everyone to that call. So with that, I'll stay on the line for just a minute, but I just want to thank everyone for dialing into the June 14th governance sync, and respectful of schedules. Thank you for your time. Not keep you late. Thank you again, everybody. Welcome to the second Notary Governance meeting of June 14th, 2022. And high-level topics for agenda. This will probably be a faster call. We did this morning. We took a lot of time just to kind of flesh out. Since there's substantially less of us on the line, just to kind of prep you, this might be a faster one. We're going to introduce you to some new friendly faces on the PL side that will be helping with the governance team. We're going to take some time just as a quick check-in on metrics to keep you updated on where the performance stands. We're going to highlight 3 community issues that were flagged, and Galen's going to give an overview on some of the updates with LDVN. We'll update that. And then we save time for anything you want to talk about, as well as any applicants that want to be on the line for Q&A. So at a high level, those will be the main agenda points and subcategories as we go through it. So with that, a very friendly hello from Deep, Galen, and myself, who you've probably seen many times. If you're on the line for the first time, we're going to ask a chance for you to kind of check in and say it, but you're going to recognize that this slide went from 3 faces to 4th. So I'm going to turn the floor over to our 4th mystery participant, who's now running trust and transparency for the network.
Hi, everyone. My name is Raghav. It's my second week here at PL, and I'll be, as Kevin mentioned, I'll be helping out with trust and transparency. So what that looks like in the coming few months is thinking about the risk scoring system within Fil+, also thinking about client onboarding and the UX side of things on that. I had a chance to meet some of you last week in Austin. That was my first week, so I was still catching up on a lot of things, but I'm looking forward to working together. And if you have any questions or anything that you think might be helpful for me to know, you can find me on Filecoin Slack. So please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much. And yeah, looking forward to the session today.
Very happy to have you. Perfect timing. We have a lot of these questions coming up. So welcome. Glad to have you. If you're on the line right now, on the next slide, we're going to ask for participation. Consider this just optional, but just as we start to work together as a community dialing in, sometimes it gets really tricky to field these questions that come in from Slack or may come in after someone who's watching it. So if you're on this line and you want to make it just a little bit easier on comms for yourself, ours, and the community, take a moment and just make sure that your name is something that we would match. So make it your Slack name, make it your GitHub handle. But sometimes we come back, we're trying to field questions after the fact, and it's like cool power guy number 27. And we're like, I have no idea who this is. So if you set your name, it makes it a lot easier for us to help you out if you need it. And with that, we're going to post the Slack for the SLA check-in. Just as a quick heads up, we've been doing this for the last 4 notary governance calls. Thank you, Galen. I've now collected all of that data, and in the notary channel tonight and tomorrow, I'm going to post like, hey, Notary X, I've got you as attending the last 4 out of 5 governance sessions. Does this jive with your schedule as well? And if this works for everybody else, we're going to switch to a model where we post that check-in ahead of the call so we don't take time on the call in the future to go forward, and it will auto-populate into the leaderboard that Alexandria is building for us. So this is kind of one of the last times that we'll be asking for this, and we'll move to a model where this is more automated and then pick that up. All right, we're going to talk about metrics and get into really good stuff. As a quick refresher, the metrics that we're really looking at for this program right now is the time to data cap and the storage on the network. So with time to data cap, as you can see right now, we've taken a 2-day hit. It means it takes 2 days longer for someone to get data cap out of the network from their first reply. And I apologize, I have a typo in this one, but the average time to data cap right now as it stands from that response is 3 days. And this is to be expected. We are rolling out the data cap for all the new notaries. We went from 20 to 50, so that's taken quite a significant batch of time. And then a lot of the delay is also from our waiting for LDN v3. And so Galen's got a lot of great news when we get to that. But the big highlight to call this slide right now is that time to data cap, we're still around that 1 week. And we're going to call this out with any applicants that are on the line. And you might submit an application and you say, hey, it's been a week, I haven't heard back. That's pretty normal. If you go longer than a week, something might be off. And we'll talk about tips for applicants to make their data cap requests go a little bit faster. As far as network storage and performance, we don't see any kind of main drop-offs. It kind of looks like business as usual over the last 2 weeks. So nothing substantial to call out, no drastic reduction in storage capacity, no drastic increase in storage capacity. The big takeaway from that is we're still just kind of chugging along. We're still kind of like no big drastic changes. We'll highlight this if anything should change. Now, here's the first thing where we're looking for input from you on the call. So I realize that majority of us are screens off muted, so feel free to type into chat or type into Slack or to unmute. But what we're looking for right now is every day in the Notary Slack channel, this filter bot will post. And it will say something like, hey, there's 5 LDNs, 15 applications, whatever the number is. And right now it is not tagging individuals. So we got some feedback. It's like, yeah, I'm not checking it because I don't know that that was directed to me. And so one of the feedbacks we got was, can we make that filter bot tag each individual person? We brought this up on the last call, and now we're going to put it to a vote. And so if Masaki or Danny or anybody actually had an application from a client or a request for data, you'll get a tag and it will say, hey, this is waiting for you. And it's meant to be a friendly ping to let you go into your registry and clear it out quick. It's not meant to be a spam. So this is that moment where you come to chat and you say, please don't tag me. I think the Slack would be overwhelming. Or you say, yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's test it out. Galen had a great point this morning, and it was this filter bot's running every day. If we test out the tagging in Slack and it gets to be too much, you could give us that feedback and say, hey, dial it back from posting every day to maybe twice a week. So I'm going to pause, unmute if anybody has thoughts. Galen, Danny, anybody in the community, feel free to share them now, or you can put them in chat.
Hey, Galen. Jesse from Picnic. I'm not a notary, but James from Picnic is. I just wanted to give a suggestion. Could we attach like the age of each request so the notaries know what to prioritize? You're muted.
There was quite a bit of background noise. Galen, I
think
saw
I heard.
Can you answer that just so I?
Yeah, I think Jesse is asking if we could put maybe something like using the example on the screen, like client allocation request for Yoshihito photography, issue number 1718, assigned to Masaki, and maybe something like opened for X number of days. So that maybe the request there is to say, in addition to tagging, if directly in the issue, we could have prioritization schema so that the notary could glance at this and say, of the 5 that my name is showing up next to, one of them is much older. I think it's an interesting idea. I don't think it's impossible. I think it would require a little bit more tech just to figure out how we would calculate it. But we could ask the team to see how hard that would be. I think my gut reaction is what I would rather is when the notary like signed on and saw their name next to 5, they just did all 5. And if it took like too long to do that many, that's a different issue compared to like, oh, I've only got time to do one of these allocations. That's just my like hot gut take, but I think that is a very interesting idea. Definitely something that we could ask if there are other people that have sort of similar thoughts on how useful that would be.
Hello, this is Steven. I say my name is here for 3 times on this table. I have a suggestion here. I believe that these 3 applications, I had some questions for them, but I didn't get any response for a few days. So if they reminder what like this, I will get this kind of reminder day by day. But actually, I'm waiting for response from the clients. So could have some intelligence to say that if the notary respond, if the notary response is the last comment, and actually, the ball is on the client side. Right? So actually, for the 3 items, I just closed the issue because I waited for 10 days, but no response.
I think that's a really good point. I think that makes a lot of sense. In a perfect world, we would have some additional tooling to change the labels, because what we would want basically is for the notary to post a question and to then change the label to say, waiting for client or further info needed. And then for the client, when they replied, for it to switch the label back to, needs diligence. So again, like that's a really interesting idea. That makes a lot of sense. It would require a little bit more tech work on the back end, because right now this bot that posts this is just looking for, is it open? Does it have the label needs diligence? So we would need to kind of manipulate those labels. But I think that's a really good idea too. We could look at that. I think what we're really trying to get here to fundamentally is like, how can we best notify notaries that there are open issues, and what is like the best alerting mechanism? And this is one of them, but I see your points. Danny, you have a hand. You have 2 points to make. 3. How many?
2.
2 points.
So the first one is just this looks fine. I do kind of like the idea of the 2 days or the twice a week rather than every day, but I'm just putting a vote in for that. The other question I have is, what's the status of us thinking about building a system that isn't kind of hanging off GitHub for all of this? Because it feels like a lot of these user interface and notification issues are due to the fact that we kind of have to build everything around
kludge it off GitHub.
Yeah.
You know, Danny, it's funny you mentioned that, and it's almost as if we work together and I feed you these questions. But I really promise.
No, genuinely.
We don't. But Deep and I have been dreaming about that for a long time, and we are actually in talks with a dev shop. We have some exploration calls with a dev shop this week to build some client-facing tools. And this kind of thing, we will probably continue using the notary tooling that Kiko has built, but that we will kind of disambiguate the client part of it off of GitHub potentially. And so with that, these kinds of back and forth conversations where, you know, Stephen asks a question, it needs to say it has gone back to the client. We can track when the client replies, like that back and forth could theoretically sometime in, you know, this year come off of GitHub and happen in another platform. So that is a dream state. And it is a thing that we are in investigation. Because there have been a number of issues where people are like, I don't have access to GitHub. GitHub doesn't fit into my workflow. GitHub deleted my account. You know, and there's just a lot of, when we don't own that surface area and that infrastructure, it is really hard to like make it do what we need it to do. And that leads to lots of different pain points across the program. So yeah, great ideas. Thank you, Jesse, Stephen, and Danny for your points on this. As people have like more questions, comments, and ideas, we love to hear them.
Plus one. So Jesse, what I've written down in my notes is that having some kind of prioritization schema where you can see how long it's been open, I'll explore and I'll let the notary channel know on that. And Stephen, I also appreciate that, seeing if we could have some type of label that the bot's pulling from that will tell you, you have immediate action, that way you're not getting spammed and having to check things. That's the kind of feedback I really appreciate. Just wanted to drive that home. Thank you. Sweet. All right, Galen, do you want to talk to the 6-week sprint coming up?
Yes, happy to. So if you tuned in to some of our state of the program last week at Fil+ Day, we talked about some of our objectives kind of from now through October for the entire program for the governance team. One of the things that we talked about doing was sort of organizing ourselves into some sprints. So I have taken a stab here at saying from now across the next 6 weeks, and we'll check in again July 26th, what are some of the specific areas where we will be focusing our work. So just want to share these out loud so that all of you can now be my accountability buddies. As far as the system status goes, this week we will be starting the implementation for LDNV3. Has already kicked off. But in addition to that, across the next 6 weeks, we want to add some additional tooling and some additional training resources to kind of make sure that that LDNV3 is up and running. So that's kind of a high level system status goal in the sprint. Volume wise, we're trying to target 200 PIBs sealed in DataCap. We're at 100. So I don't know if we can double the scale of the program in 6 weeks, but boy, howdy, it looks good if I set reach goals, doesn't it? If we can get to 175 active LDNs, we'll be happy. And I think that one is very achievable. We are tracking and publishing time to data cap for LDNs. We want to get the from approval by the Gov team to first allocation. We want to get that to less than 3 days. And we want to consistently get 2 days without data cap for unpaused applications to 0. And so that means that once a LDN client has gotten their first allocation, we want the subscription top up subsequent allocation bot kind of process to work such that they don't run out. We've gotten pretty close to this. We've gotten down to the wire on a few. I think that we're doing well, but being able to publish that as a win will be great. From the engagement side, we have some README documentation updates that are going to be coming out across our different GitHub repos. From the governance side, we are looking forward to seeing some working group proposals for some proof of concept in this 6-week sprint. And from the risk side, the foundation will be working on getting a job description and working to hopefully be interviewing for some increased headcount in sort of trust and transparency, trust and safety arena. So those are some high level objectives. So when you're wondering why are we doing the things we do or not, or ignoring you, this is where our energy as a governance team is sort of focused. Any questions, comments, or concerns? You could raise your hand now or send slacks in the notary space. Awesome. Moving swiftly on, K-Ray, you want to tell us about what we did last week?
Maybe I'll just kick off with a big note of gratitude to those of you that came in person. Just big thank you. It's nice to have your company, get to meet you and kick off. To those of you that spoke, Meg, thank you for coming, giving an enterprise proposal, meeting the communities. And those of you that watched, it was kind of cool to be able to like tune in, see the live viewership, and then go forward on that. Just to kind of keep you updated, the things that are happening right now is we're reviewing all the videos in post-production. We're making sure that the cameras line up with the screen share, with the audio, and making sure that they have appropriate subtitles for Mandarin. And we're going to be hanging these on YouTube in the coming days. So everything from the Fil Plus Day will be posted live, and we'll have that back up as you want to watch it. One of the big takeaways was it would have been nice if we would have had more time to stretch out sessions and have longer Q&As. So we might be talking about having another Fil Plus Day, maybe like scale down from being in a hotel with like live participants to strictly online, and that way we can afford some more time to it. But just a big note of gratitude. Anybody else, Galen, anybody on the line, have any thoughts or feedback on Fil Plus Day?
I was just going to give another big shout out appreciation to K-Ray. He really led the charge on this and wrangled a bunch of cats. And you know, it takes a massive team. And as you guys know, anytime you're trying to organize a massive team with different stakeholders and different competing priorities, getting them to pull in the same direction is really difficult. So K-Ray, the success of this event, like doing hybrid events is really difficult. Doing hybrid events where you have multiple rooms with very different stakeholders, you know, events are complicated, and so for us to pull one off that I think went pretty much without a hitch and had very top class like video production, we're going to see some like great photos from it. You know, I think that the room setup went really well, and I think that it clearly shows that we invested a lot of time into running this. So props to K-Ray for that. And like he said, echoing, just thank you so much to everybody that was there. Deep's opinion from this morning is that we need to have, you know, more of these more frequently. We'll see on that, but it would be nice to get to a slightly higher cadence. Otherwise, you'll never hear from us again until next year. Filecoin Plus Day will remain annual. TBD. Let's go into that.
All right, next item on the agenda, just to kind of check in, it's the ledger verification. So when we did the onboarding with all the new notaries, thank you for your patience. I wanted to check in because this has been like one of those questions that we've got a lot of DMs. So 2 points to this, and I'll hand it over to Galen for 2 additional thoughts. Point number 1, the ledger verification is a required step and for the program. The reason for that is with this verification step, we can verify that the notary who is physically the KYC on this is the same notary that controls the signature address line. Without this step, we truly don't have any kind of physical KYC. So I know that some existing notaries have been using other scripts and different ways around this. Some of you might have ordered a ledger and had some issue. Galen will talk about that. But the big thing that I wanted to drive home on this call is that this ledger step for verification is a requirement for signing data. And we'll get into some other things you can do in the meantime. What I'm asking is that if you have any kind of technical blockers, complications, I very much appreciate the group threads, the DMs. I think what may be happening is that we're overlooking some of those because of the sheer volume of DMs that come through. So if you have any technical blocker, any kind of issue with your ledger, any kind of shipping delay, what we're recommending is rather than sending me a DM, rather than sending Galen a DM or Deep or anybody, if you post to the Fil Plus notaries, this way we get the benefit of answering your question in a public record, but then it's also a lot easier to unblock you same day, next day. To those of you that might have had to wait a couple of days, my apologies. Hopefully we've got you all squared away. We have a very short list of those that you haven't registered, but the big takeaway is this is a required step. I'm going to hand it over to Galen for a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so as we said, some notaries have not completed this part. I do know that there are some notaries that do not want to use a ledger device and do not want to use some of the tooling that is built. That is, it is an open system, and that generally we understand, and that makes sense. But for the tools that we have, they're currently just, we are not able to support all of the different implementations or all of the different hardware wallets, and so we are currently using a ledger device on our tooling. So for the notaries that do not have a physical ledger device for maybe a shipping issue, we understand. We ask that you continue to participate and keep us updated, and we can ratify you once you get that device, and then we can onboard you to the different tooling services that we have. For some notaries, you may have a ledger, but you haven't done the verification in plus.fil.org. Please do that. The tooling is going to make you do that before you can start making allocations using the tool. So please jump in. Or you may have a ledger, but the address on the device does not match what's in your GitHub application. And this is leading to some of those tech issues that Carrie was talking about. So your addresses, those two addresses need to match. If you are having an issue, message us in Slack. So those are some of the kind of scenarios that we're talking about. And then, Carrie, if you could advance for me, please. Thank you. So this was the list that I have. It may be outdated. We may have already gotten a few updates. I haven't gone through and refreshed all of this list, but these are people for one reason or another that I have in my big ugly spreadsheet as not yet verifying their ledger device. That doesn't necessarily mean that these people have not been ratified as notaries. It just means that they have not yet verified their device. So if you see your name on this list and you are confused as to why, please reach out to us in Slack, check that your physical ledger device address matches, and let us know what the situation is. So as always, we just ask for transparency. That's all I have there.
I'm going to pause here. I know we had a question in chat. So if anybody else has any kind of blockers, issues, we're just going to take a moment on here with the ledger verification and see if you guys have anything. All right. Proposal 538 was floated by Fatman during the week, and this comes down to the time of this call. So essentially, we'll post the link here if you're keen to see it in 538. What the proposal was talking about is just reviewing the times that we do these calls. As a quick flashback on the program, when it kicked off, there was one call a day. A lot of the feedback was it was unable to make the call. So we split it into two. We have one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and the goal of that is to overlap. So our afternoon's your morning, vice versa. And the feedback was that this time is tricky for some people in parts of the world. So we're kind of seeking community discussion right now on, does this time work? We're going to kind of prioritize those of you that are on the call right now for feedback. And then we're going to post this one more time to see if we could kind of get some additional thoughts. So those of you that are on the call, would this be better if it was an hour sooner, an hour later, keep it how it is, or any additional thoughts?
Can you go back a slide?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I think, Meg, I see you on the call. I know that you had mentioned different times previously. Oh, yeah, you just chimed in. This time works for down under. Oh, okay. I thought that in the past you had requested a different time, but I couldn't remember. So if this time works well.
It works for me. I was just trying to find a time that everybody could join, which isn't possible.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood. Yes. This time or an hour later is one of the comments. Okay. I'm going to drop the that GitHub issue where Fatman opened this, and then if there are more opinions, we'll be able to capture them in one place.
For transparency, how we think about this. So right now, it's California, it's 4 p.m. Pacific time zone. I think the feedback was in Shanghai, definitely fact check me, but it's like somewhere around 6, 7 a.m. And the feedback was if it was a little bit later, you could get there in the office. One of the concerns was for anybody who was North America, then you're starting to push it to like 5, 6, 7 o'clock where we might see dwindling. There's no right answer. I think if I had to stress one thing while we're just talking, it's that we're flexible. So if there was strong opinions, strong thoughts, we will definitely bias towards it. If you don't have strong opinion, maybe just say, I don't have strong opinion, I'm pretty flexible. I think my worry is that we move it an hour or two and then we drop 50% of our participation. So we'll probably be pulling this. I'll try to make it as low lift as possible, but the goal is to make this as easy for you to attend as we go forward. So any other thoughts? Thank you for posting that link.
And then the other thing, sorry if this was already said on this call, we do 2 of these, and we absolutely do not expect everyone to be able to attend both. So we, are really just looking for trying to diversify that coverage and get out of the 2, get it so that everyone works. Okay, so talking about V3, rollout, rollover, roll up, roll preposition. Some news for all you notaries and clients that are on the call. As we launch this, the existing approved GitHub issues will remain open. So if you are a client or you're a notary working with a large data set issue, that issue will remain open. The subsequent allocation, the next allocation that it is ready for, is just going to come from the new V3 notary. So for all of you new notaries, you are now on this multi-sig. Once you sign into the tooling and see a new LDN request that's coming from this V3 notary, you'll be able to sign that. If you were to sign on right now today, I think you'll see something like, I can't remember, 20 or 30 that are currently ready to sign, but those are still being listed as coming from their old address. We're still going to have to do some work to roll over those allocations that are already either in process because they already have one proposal and are waiting for the approval, or because they are marked as ready to sign, but are still pointing at their previous multi-sig. So we'll be working on that process. If you're a brand new client, then your first allocation will be coming from the V3 notary. So the important thing to kind of watch out for as both clients and notaries in this process is we're going to be using this label that is state approved. This label should be going on and only coming off when there is an issue, and it should be on there so that all of the clients that have been approved and are ready to be receiving allocations and then being watched by the subsequent allocation bot should have this label. So what that label means is that a client application has been approved by the governance team and that it is then ready for diligence and signatures by the notaries. So one of the things that we're really trying to cut down with this step is the delay of sending it to the root key holders and then needing the root key holders to take action for every LDN in order to create a new multi-sig entity. And so in this process, the root key holders do not need to approve every LDN. Instead, the governance team will approve it as just a base surface layer of like, yeah, we did a spot check. Then it goes to the notaries. So K-Ray, if you could give a slide for me, please. So the expectations for your notaries in this new system are essentially the same. Like you're still going to be able to go to the repo directly and look through issues that way by putting labels on and filtering, or by going to the front end app plus.fil.org and signing in and looking at the open large data sets. You could go either path and see which ones have the state approved and ready to sign. When it has those two labels, that means that it is on the notaries to do that diligence. Look at the past deal-making behavior. We're still going to have the stats bot that posts that deal behavior, and review the client details. Are they, behaving the way they said they would? Is all the information there? Does additional diligence need to happen? And we're encouraging you to still ask more questions in that GitHub issue. So with that, like once you think that it is good enough to get that first or next allocation, sign and approve it using the front end. So again, the notary path under V3 is still very, very similar to V2. Kere, slide, please. Uh-oh.
Oh,
Oh no!
He just
Lost him.
said his laptop crashed. So
that's fine, because guess what? I have the slides open as well. So watch this. All right. Hopefully you can see these slides. Can I get a thumbs up if you can see my V3 rollout slides? Sweet. All right. So notary expectations are essentially the same. Community expectations. This is for the governance team, notaries, and just a general community member. If you see something, say something. We expect you to raise a flag for a large data set issue. If you have a question about it and you would like to pause the allocations for one reason or another. So we're going to come up with a comment template that you'll use. We will have some tutorial steps, and we'll be putting it in the README where notaries can create a saved reply, or anyone can just go and copy paste that template, and the bot will basically go in and put the label state paused instead of approved. And what this does is it will pull it off of the front end so that it doesn't show up. So if you're a notary and you come look at an LDN and you think, I can't open this link, their sample data isn't working, I want to ask a question. While you're asking that question, you may think, I don't think that it is safe for them to get a next allocation. I don't want two other notaries to jump in and sign this because it's missing some really critical information. So you're going to put that comment on and you're going to say, missing this, waiting for this, ask the question, wait for the client to reply. This is kind of similar to what Stephen was talking about earlier with the back and forth. The ball is then in the court of the client. And so we get that this is a baked in slowdown, and that this could come from any community member. So that may be a thing that we need to really design for. It may become abused. A community member may jump in and selectively pause large data set clients for some reason or another. So we're just going to watch out for that and see if there is abuse or malicious behavior. But basically, there could be lots of different reasons that we may want to pause, such as a client submits duplicate applications and we just need to resolve, or their address is missing or something. So we're going to have a process where notaries will be able to raise that flag, which would pause it, and then governance team will be able to clear and resolve those flags. So this is part of V3 that we're testing. In addition to this, there's a new dashboard view. This dashboard view is now live as of today. It's on our interplanetary dashboard, which I will drop the link to now. And it's chunked as large data sets. And so we're still working on kind of making sure this dashboard looks the way we want it to and gives us the information that we need. But effectively, because we're now working with one multi-sig handling multiple clients, we've restructured the view to say, let's look at groups of two notaries and how those two notaries interact together. This is pulling from existing information. This will start to work a little bit better under the new V3, but it is looking at the 435 allocations that were made under V2. So that's where this like first set of data came from. So please go check out that new dashboard. I think that it has some really useful new information. And if it's missing something, let us know in Slack and we can pass that information on to that team. We have another participation check here, which I will grab that link again. And I think I saw
just put it
K-Ray jump back in. Oh, K-Ray's back. Whew. Flying blind there for a second, but we got it under control. So with that, we're going to pause. We've covered lots of different open issues, lots of information and metrics. Just wanted to see if there were general questions, comments, or concerns about any of these or anything else from the members on this call. So at this point, looking for raised hands, or you could just go ahead and unmute.
This is great. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, then what we're going to do to keep with our promise of giving you a few extra minutes back on this call is, Galen, would you mind going to the second to last slide in this deck, please? I see that we have some applicants on the line. Thank you for coming. Just for SA across the board, about two governance calls ago, we realized that we had more applicants who wished to present their projects than we had realistic time. So what we did was we set up a proposal where the applicants could record a short video of their organization and their data request, and then make that available to notaries for review. The hope is to not have to spend hours on demos, and that you could see this ahead of the call and come with any questions. As we roll this process out, the intended goal is that I'll share in Slack on the application channel and the private notary channel the video as well as the application. And that way, during the call, you might come with questions like, hey, I saw that application, but I don't want to get involved because it's private data or it has X, Y, and Z. To those of you that are on the call as an applicant, here is my feedback and advice. Number one, if you've submitted an application and it's been a week, you are well within that window of how long it takes to get a response. Number two is that if it's been longer than a week or two and you have not gotten a response, what that should be telling you is that the notaries who are looking at your application have so many questions, or they see so many sticky issues that they may not want to dip a toe into really kind of integrating into those questions. So number 2.1, my advice is, if you're an applicant and it's been 2 weeks and you've had no notary interactions, is to look at previous applications that have been approved. Go into GitHub, sort by approved, and see somebody with a very similar data set. If you're doing vacation photos, find somebody else. If you're doing like home security, find somebody else in that workflow. And then look at what questions those notaries have asked them and try to address that in your GitHub application. Either make your own issue and say that, or then come back. This will rapidly facilitate, because if you just post into application review, hey, please look at us, what you're relying on is essentially somebody to step in there and bridge that gap. And we're going to push this back to you as the applicant. If it's clear cut, if it's standard, if the website use case all makes sense, you'll see it go faster. If you're hitting those delays, that might be the reason why. I would happily put my time on the board. Ping me in the application review like, hey, Kevin, why do you think I'm not getting any traction on this? And I'll tell you, hey, I have 20 questions about your website, your organization, maybe address these, and then that will make it a little bit faster. So with that, the screenshot that Galen is sharing right there were some of the applications that came back. I posted these in Slack if you want to grab them, along with their video. But notaries on the call, I will say that the people that took the time to put this together are the people that are putting in that extra +1. They're not just like phoning it in. So if you were keen to look at an application and get involved and have somebody that is a willing participant, these people have shown that they are willing to spend that extra minute to get you the information that you need. So with that, I'll open it up. If any applicant or any notary has questions about these, the floor is yours.